What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the One Man Startup. Today's video, we are going to pretty much just only do layout stuff, but this is all going to set us up to start doing authentication with Firebase. So if you can see here in our XD design, I actually created a few new pages. The two screens we're going to build out in this video are actually these first two right here. It's going to be just a welcome screen that kind of prompts the user to sign up or skip the sign up. If they click get started, this prompt here is going to pop up, and it's going to be kind of a custom prompt dialog box that we're going to build out. And this will be all reusable here, so we can have this in other parts of our app if we'd like. So if the user does click create an account, they'll be brought to this create account page. We're not actually going to do any of these pages in this video, but those will be to come. So let's get started and build out these two pages here. First thing we're going to want to do is create a new Dart file, and this we're just going to call the first view. And that's going to be this page right here. So it's pretty simple. It's just going to have, later we might add an image to this if we get like a logo for the site, but we're going to keep it pretty simple for now. So first thing to do is pretty much import the stuff that we're going to need, which is obviously the material package. And then with that, we can actually just go ahead and create the new, this is actually a stateless widget. And then for that, we're just going to call this the first view. All right, let's just go ahead and return a scaffold from this widget. So just like that. And let's just simply right now put a container in it, which we're just going to make with a background color of this blue color that we have here. So to use a custom color, we can just copy the hex version of the color, and in this widget, in this view widget, we can just make a variable, and we'll just call it the primary color. You can name it whatever you like, and just make that a constant of color, and then give it this value that we copied over. The only thing is you need to put a 0x before the color, and that's just for the opacity, and I think these two values, one value is the opacity, and then the other one is, I don't quite remember, but basically that's the style you conform to there. And then here we can just use that primary color just like we would any color. So if we want to show this page when we first launch the app, so go into main. So we're going to need to import that new file we just created, which will be under views and then first view, like that. And then for right now, later we're going to be checking basically if you're signed in or not. We'll call either you'll see the first view or you'll see the regular home view, but for now we can just call first view while we're building it. And as you can see, we get that nice blue background. All right, that's good. Now we need to just add in the rest of we need to add in these two text fields, which is relatively simple once we have the structure of this set up. So inside the scaffold here, or actually rather inside the container here, we want to add the child for the container. And we're actually going to use the safe area. We're going to wrap this in the safe area widget, which is going to, for the iPhones especially, and really all the mobile devices, it'll keep us inside those the safe area boundaries. If you've used Swift before, this is very similar. They have a similar type of thing in there. So then inside the safe area, let's go ahead and make a column. And within the column, now we can use a bunch of, put all those widgets in there. So the first one we can do is the text that says, I think it just says welcome. Yes, welcome. And we're going to want to style this slightly. So for now, let's just put the text in there. And the next text will be, it says, let's start planning your trip, I believe. Yeah. We can actually just copy that from here, drop it in there. And now if we run the app again, you can see a few problems are going on here. So the width of our container now is, because we have the column, is actually only as wide as our text is. So to fix that, we actually can just set the width and height of our container. So up here, we can set the width to equal, and we want it to be the screen width. So no matter what size screen you run this on, we want to use that screen width. So for that, we can use this media query of context and just give it the size and the width, the size width. So that would be the width. And the height is actually almost the same, or very similarly. You're going to use the same media query of context, and then this time just use size, height. All right, and then with that, now we're seeing how that looks nicely. So we want to style our text a bit, but okay, so for that we can just add actually the style here, and we're going to give it the text style. The main thing we want to change is the color and the size, so let's do the size first. Font size is, and you go back into the XD project here, since this is all pretty much to scale, 44 is the size. We can just go ahead and use 44. And then the color, and we're just going to use plain white, which we can get like that. All right, that looks good. Format this all up. Same thing here. We want to add the style, which is the text style, and give it the font size. All right, and then the color here. Oh, actually, that needs to be in these parentheses. All right, that looks decent. Now, you'll notice that this is kind of starting to, I mean, this text is quite large here. So one thing that this could might worry, or one thing that this could become a problem with, is on like smaller devices. So if you use like an iPhone 5, for example, this layout isn't going to necessarily be the way that you want it to look with the text. Now, there is this good plugin that we're going to use that's called the auto size text widget. So let's go ahead and install that, and I'll link to that obviously in the description as well. So how it will work is allow you to, just like how you would a regular text, just how you would regularly use the text widget, this is used very similarly, but you can also kind of specify that you want this on 2 lines only, and then if the screen were to get too small, it'll readjust the text to fit that new screen, which is what we want. So there we go. I just imported the package, and now we just need to import the package on our actual file. And then to use this, we pretty much can just change this out to be, instead of text, it would just be auto size text. So auto size text like that. And you don't really notice the difference right now, but if you were to run this on smaller devices, once you have it kind of set up how you want on a big device, you'll see things might not line up how you were expecting. So this is also a nice way to just kind of be safe about all those different screen sizes. So how we can use this then is we can set our max lines here. So just to demonstrate how this would work, if we said 1, then all of this, it readjusts. We have the size of the font as 40, but it readjusts to be 1, all on 1 line. 2 looks good, so it will look the same there. The other thing we want to do is center this, so just use text align and text align center. All right, that looks good. And we already have our color set up. All right, so that looks fine. Now we need to add a bit of spacing. Similarly, we want to do our spacing to take into account the different screen sizes. So we don't want to just say put 50 points or 50 pixels up here and 50 pixels down here. Instead, we want to say we want to use a percentage of the screen size. So as we're using this media query over here, we're going to actually use this quite a bit. So let's go ahead and pull that out and make it a variable. So this one is the width, and that's going to equal the width there, and do the same for the height, and that will be just the height. Okay, actually pull these into the build method because we need that context. So make sure that's inside the build widget. But then here, these can just be changed to width and height, which will be these variables here. And we can even go ahead and make these only be usable inside this widget. Great. So if you run that, everything should look the same. But now we can kind of start to space these out using these height and width properties. So create a sized box, which is basically we can just give, it's just a placeholder that we can give a height to. And for instance, how you would normally do this is say 40 points here, and you can see that drops down that. But what we really want to use is this height element that we just created, and then give it a percentage of the screen height, which we can do by multiplying by a fraction of the entire screen. So let's say we want to put it down 10% of the screen's height. So we could do that just like that. And then again, let's just go ahead and put that at the bottom of this welcome as well. So now we have like 10% of the screen up here is that box, 10% of it is right here, and everything looks good. The only other thing is this probably needs a bit of padding. So let's just go ahead and add the padding around. We can actually add it around the column if we want to make sure everything is padded. For this one, it doesn't really matter because this is the only one this text field is really the only one that's going to need the padding, but I think it's better to kind of make the whole column padded. But we actually want to pad it a bit more than 8, so let's give it 16. With that padding, I think this all looks good. All right, and this is looking a bit funky, probably, yeah, missing a comma there. All right, that looks good. Now we can add our buttons. So we have 2 buttons that we're going to be adding, our Get Started button and our Sign In button. So let's do the Get Started one first. Keeping on with this similar, with this style, with these raised boxes, with these sized boxes, pretty much we can just copy another one of these, throw it down below that text, and then this time, and then below that, create a raised button. With a raised button, we want the color to be white, the background color, so that will set to white. We also want to add the rounded sides to it, so we can use the shape, this shape parameter here, and we can give it a rounded rectangle border, and then give a border radius of a circular border radius, and we'll just put 30. The border radius, I guess, should be about half of the height of what the button ends up being, but I think 30 will be good for what this looks like, but we'll see in a minute. Then we can give the actual button text. So let's set that to Get Started. Last thing we need to add is just the on pressed. And this on pressed will actually have that dialog box come up right here. So for now, let's just go ahead and leave this empty, and we'll come back and build out that whole dialog after this. So if you look at the updates on that, our button looks all right. We got our background there. We need to change the color of the text inside of that to our blue, our primary blue. So go ahead and do a text style, and then color is that primary color. Also, we want to add a bit more space here. So pretty much just around our text here, just go ahead and add padding, and we're actually going to do less padding on the top. So let's do top. We'll do 15 here, as well as the bottom. And then the left and right, let's do 30. All right, and that expands our button a bit. Let's go ahead and just make the font size slightly bigger, and that should also enlarge the button. So font size, I think, is probably, let's see. Font size here is 28, so let's go ahead and add that in. 28. All right, the font is a little thick, so let's go ahead and change the font weight to a font weight of probably 300. I think 400 is the default, or 500 is the default, so this gives it like two weights less. Yeah, that looks pretty much the same as our drawing there. Maybe just go ahead and make these like 10, the top and bottom. Yeah, I think that looks better. All right, that looks good. We just need to come back to that on pressed there. The other last piece is to just add that sign in button, which actually we're also going to it's not really going to be functioning right now, but let's go ahead and add it anyway. Add another spacer, a sized box spacer. And actually, if you remove that comma there, we can get this all in one line for these spacers. And that's when you are pretty much doing the auto reformat. I think that just looks better. Let's see. So likewise, this one can be sized up like that. So for this one, we're going to actually want a flat button, not a raised button, because we don't want to show the button. We just want to pretty much show the text. So let's go ahead and make that text. And this will be sign in. And I guess we'll add similar style to this, which is going to be the color, which will be white. And the font size, which I think probably 25 is good. All right, you can see that's actually a bit too far down. So go ahead and change this from 10 to, let's do half that, 0.05. And let's go ahead and add a bit more spacing above the get started button. Let's go ahead and make that 15% of the height. Yeah, I think that looks good. Then the other thing, I guess, or for this button, the last thing we need to add is actually going to be the on pressed. And that's actually going to go to the sign in page, which we haven't created yet. So let's go ahead and wait on that as well, and we'll come back to it. So good, we have this first page all set up. Let's go ahead now and set up this custom box here that's going to pop up when we get our or when we click get started. Our custom dialog box is what it is. It's pretty much just a dialog box, but this is going to kind of be our format for our dialog box. So since since this is going to be kind of custom styled, we'll probably be reusing this throughout the app for various different things. So we're going to actually extract this into a widget of its own and then pass it in basically these 4 text parameters of a title, the body, the primary button, and the secondary button, and they're both their actions as well. And then with that, we can kind of this will be more reusable. So let's go ahead and create a new folder over here, or package, I guess is what it's called here. And let's just call it widgets. And these are where we're going to put our reusable widgets, which this will be the first one that we're creating. So a new Dart file, and let's call this the custom dialog. And Flutter already has a dialog widget that we're going to use, and we're pretty much just going to use that and then modify it to look like the custom one. The problem is that the out of the box one from Flutter, it looks too Android-like, and then you could use the one that looks iOS-like, but we want ours, like our custom one, to be to look good on both devices, really, without having to do the logic of figuring out which dialog box we should use. So let's just import 2 packages, material obviously, and then also that auto size text which we used before. And then this is going to be a stateless widget, so create a stateless widget there, and we'll call it custom dialog. All right, so then in here we're going to require 4 of those parameters, and then have 2 optional parameters, which is going to be that secondary button. But all the parameters are going to be strings, at least for now. So we could do this all in one line. We're going to have the title, the description, the primary button, text, as well as the primary button route. So that's where what the button's gonna do essentially. And then we're also gonna have secondary button text and route. All right, so those are like that. Then we need to just pretty much instantiate those when we call an instance of this, we want to be passed those values. So okay, the problem here is I'm not using this in front of the required ones. All right, so down here we're going to return actually a dialog. And inside the dialog, firstly, let's just give it a shape. So we want it to actually have the rounded corners, so rounded rectangle border there, and give it the border radius of a circular border radius right there. And we can just go ahead and use that padding. All right, now that we got the shape set up for our dialog, we can add the child element, which in this case is actually going to be a stack view. All right, so inside our stack view, we can add a container, and then in our container, we can add our padding first off, which is just going to be the padding of our padding value. Then we can put a decoration here, or we're going to use the decoration parameter here, and we'll do a box decoration. And then this is kind of how we're going to build out what our what our pop-up looks like. So the background color is going to be white, so add that. Then the shape is going to be a box shape type of rectangle. Then we'll have the border radius here, which can be also, we'll just use that padding value. It'll be circular with that padding value. Finally, we can add a shadow. This actually takes a list parameter, which is going to be a box shadow. yeah, box shadow there. And then this, we can just give, you know, a color. We'll just make the color black for now. You can play around with this and make it maybe gray, like a grayish color, but we'll do black for now. All right, then actually give it a blur radius, and that just for now use 10. You can play around with that as well to see what kind of blur radius you like best. The offset can just be a constant of a type offset, which this is going to be kind of like where the shadow goes. We'll just do it on the bottom, so do 0 and 10. All right, that should be good for that. And then now that we have our container here, we can go ahead and add the child for the container. And the child for that is actually going to be a column. And then inside that column, we want to set the main axis size here to be the main axis size minimum, and that's just gonna make this pop-up be as small as possible instead of taking up the whole height of our screen. And then in here we'll have our children, and the children of this is going to be pretty much all those elements that we're passing in up here. So the first one, we're going to use that auto size text instead of just regular text. The first one's going to be the title, and the title will have a max lines of 2, and it will be centered, so center it. And also for the color of that, we want, let's see, the title color is actually our primary color, so we can use our primary color variable there. And the font size here is going to be 25. All right, so that's good for our first widget. For these, let's just use, also we'll use our sized boxes here. We're just going to use a regular height of 24. You can go ahead and make this a variant of the height of the, a variant of the height of the actual screen, but for simplicity, I think we'll just use this for now. Our second text, which is our main text actually, our description, is going to be kind of similar. Let's go ahead and make that 4 lines though, and keep it centered. The text color here, let's actually create a new variable, and we'll call it gray color. I already added it in. That's just the constant value from our gray color here in our XD design. So go ahead and change this to be gray color, and the font size here is going to be 18, so a bit smaller. Go ahead and add another sized box after this, and now we're into our buttons. So our first button is the primary button, which is going to be a raised button. We want that color to be our primary color, and we want the shape of it to be, because we want those rounded corners. We're going to need to use the rounded rectangle border here, and we could give it a border radius of border radius circle with, we'll use 30. We don't need that. And then let's see, then we can actually give the text of it. So the text of this is, we'll use that auto size text again, just in case. And then in here, I guess, the text of this is actually going to be that primary button text that we're passing in. We want to make sure that's only ever 1 line. And let's see, then there's a little bit of style we need to give this text style, and give it the font size of 18 should be good. And let's see, the what else do we need? Let's actually change the font weight to be a font weight of 200. I think we want a little bit thinner font here. And finally, the color will be white. That's the color for this text. And there we go. That looks good. Then we'll also need that on pressed method here. So down, let's see, I think we need, that will go right here. And the onPressed is actually going to take we want to pop off the current view. So we'll use the navigator of context, which is going to be, the context, the build context. And we want to pop off the, the navigate, or we want to pop off the custom dialog view, because when you're pressing this button, you're on that custom dialog view. So the first thing we want to do is make that disappear. Then we're going to navigate to the, we're going to navigate to whatever route is passed in to the, to this up here. We're going to navigate to this, primary button route, which is going to be a string. Now, the push, we're going to push that route to, we're going to use the push replacement named route, and the reason for that is because we want this first view controller to actually be removed as well, so you can't go back to this first view controller. So that will make using this push replacement name is going to make this route that's passed in the main route of our app at that point. So that looks good. The last thing here is just add a sized, again, our sized box. We can actually just copy this. Let's go ahead and use half the, let's use half of the size there. Let's use just 10. And then for our secondary button, let's do a flat button here. And the child on that is going to be, again, we're going to use that auto size text. And this is going to be that secondary text. And this will be much simpler. Same thing there. We want the max lines to be 1. Let's reformat that. Yeah, we want the max lines to be 1, and we want just a bit of style here. Actually, it is text style. And we want this to be, let's see, we want pretty much just the font size, which will be 18. The color, which for this is actually our primary color. And our font weight, let's change to font weight of 400, just slightly smaller there. And then the onPressed here is actually going to be pretty much the same as the onPressed for the primary button. Obviously, the only change here is going to be use the secondary button route. All right, that looks good. Now, one thing is this secondary button actually shouldn't always be here. It should only be here if we if those parameters are passed in, if that secondary button text and secondary button route were passed in. So let's go ahead and refactor this by extracting it into a method. Maybe without that comma. Let's see, refactor, extract into a method, and we're going to just call this show secondary button. And then when we hit refactor there, it's already set up to give us the context here. And really the only thing we need to do is just check before we return this, and we could do that with a simple if statement and just say, if we have the secondary button route and it's not equal to null, and we have the secondary button text and that's also not equal to null, then go ahead and build, go ahead and return this button here. If we don't have any of that, we're just going to return, we're just going to go ahead and return another boxed, sized box of 10. Yeah, that looks good. Let's see, what's our problem here? Okay, instead of having this return a flat button, we can actually just remove that. It'll just be a generic function there. All right, so our custom dialog widget should be completely set up now. The only thing we need to do is call it when this get started button is clicked. So back in our first view, go ahead and just import that new custom dialog widget there and find the get started button. And when that get started button is called, we're going to go ahead and show a dialog, which Flutter already has this show dialog method here, and the context will obviously just be the context. All right, so this show dialog has a builder, and with that, it's actually going to be it does have this build context, but that we're going to have it build a custom dialog. And if we click on this one, it'll have all the required fields. So like that. Now, the title will have it be, let's see, it'll be this, and the description will be, let me just copy that. The description is here. Then the primary button text is going to just say sign up. And I guess it's going to say create my account, right? And the secondary or the primary button route, we actually need to create this, but it will be sign up. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and add that secondary, the secondary button as well, which will be very similar to this, I guess. Secondary button text, secondary button route. The route here will be home. Guess I shouldn't have even copied that. And this will say maybe later. All right, that looks good. So let's go ahead and create these routes real quick. And to do that, we actually need to go into the main on our highest level, our my app class here, and we're going to we're going to use this routes parameter. And pretty much with this, we can just create these named routes in here, which are going to be kind of a string widget pair. So we're going to have a string that relates to a widget builder. And we can have as many of these as we want. So, create that string that we just did, sign up, is going to use that builder, or is going to build whatever kind of widget here that we described. So right now, the sign up, we still need to create the sign up pages, but so for now, we'll just have it go to home. And actually, we're going to have the home. This is properly what the home one should look like. So this is a nice way to control our routes, is to use these named routes, because now here we pass in this named route and the button should work. So if you actually save this and run it, when you click on get started, the pop-up appears, and then regardless of what button you click, it's just going to bring us to the home screen, which it did right there. All right, great. So in the next video, we're going to have to set up how to do, or the sign up page, and then obviously change our route to go to that sign up page. All right, great. So in this video, we got a lot of layout concepts taken care of. Some of the most important ones are reusable widgets, just like that dialog box. That can be used throughout the app now just by calling it and giving it those parameters. Very powerful there. Additionally, using the height and width of the screen versus just giving pixels out to set the basically responsive layouts in Flutter. Yeah, so that's all good stuff that we covered. Next, we're going to be digging into using Firebase authentication and actually getting users logged in. All right, ciao for now.